The Dragon's Den was not just a tavern. It was a place where stories of wars, lost civilizations, and strange adventures were told every day. Located on the outskirts of a forgotten planet, it stood as a place of gathering for all kinds of beings, some kind, some dangerous, and some whose very presence could make the air feel heavy with power. Leah, a young human waitress, had worked at the Dragon's Den for several months. She didn't know much about the galaxy's strange races, but she knew how to serve drinks, make people laugh, and keep out of trouble. Most of the patrons here were veterans, warriors from distant worlds who came to drink away their pain or to celebrate old victories. And among these warriors, there was a group of dragons, some of the oldest and most powerful creatures in the galaxy. Tonight, like most nights, the dragons took up their usual spot in the corner. There were 5 of them. Each dragon was a giant, their massive forms almost taking up the entire space around their table. Their scales glowed faintly in the dim light of the tavern, and their eyes, bright yellow and deep as stars, were locked onto their drinks. The air around them felt heavy, as if their presence alone commanded respect. Leah moved through the room with ease, her tray balancing drinks as she made her rounds. The other patrons were used to her by now. She was just a human in a tavern full of strange beings, but that didn't stop her from carrying herself with confidence. Most of the time, the dragons didn't say much. They were quiet, stoic, and focused on their own business. But tonight, something felt different. The usual quiet hum of conversation had been replaced with a strange tension. It was as if something was on the verge of happening, but no one knew what. Leah couldn't help but feel it too. She didn't know what it was, but the air seemed charged with something more than just the usual excitement of a tavern full of strange races. As she approached the dragon's table with a pitcher of ale, she noticed something strange. On the arm of one of the dragons, the biggest and oldest of the group with silver scales that seemed to shine like polished metal, was a tattoo. It wasn't just any tattoo. The symbol was ancient, carved deep into his skin, its shape twisting like a winding path. Leah had seen tattoos before, but none like this. For some reason, the tattoo caught her attention. There was something familiar about it, though she couldn't place it. She had seen something like it in the past. Maybe it was in one of the books her mother used to keep by her side. Leah set the pitcher of ale down on the table with a soft clink. The dragons, usually silent, glanced up at her. Their eyes, sharp and intelligent, studied her, but they didn't speak. But then something in Leah's mind clicked. Without thinking, she said, "My mom has your tattoo." The words came out before she could stop them. She froze for a moment, her breath catching in her throat. What had she just said? She could feel the dragon's eyes on her, their attention now fully focused. The air seemed to grow still as they waited for her to explain. Talon, the silver-scaled dragon, leaned forward slightly, his golden eyes narrowing in curiosity. His voice, deep and powerful, rumbled as he spoke. "What did you say, human?" Leah's heart raced. She hadn't meant to say it like that. She quickly tried to explain, her voice shaky. "I mean, my mom has a tattoo like that." "The same one. She's an archaeologist. She found it on an old relic. I've seen it on her arm since I was little." The dragons exchanged glances, their silence thickening. Talon, the leader of the group, seemed to study her more closely now. His eyes flickered to his own tattoo, and for a moment Leah saw something in his gaze, something like recognition, or maybe confusion. "You say your mother is an archaeologist?" Talon said slowly. "And she has the same tattoo?" Leah nodded, her throat dry. "Yes, she's been studying ancient relics for years. I don't know much about the details, but she said this symbol was part of an old civilization. Something about an ancient bond between humans and dragons." The words hung in the air. The dragons didn't speak right away. They simply stared at her, as if weighing her words, trying to decide if she was telling the truth. Talon's expression was unreadable. After a long silence, he leaned back in his chair, his massive wings folding slightly. "You say your mother is an archaeologist, but you also claim she knows of a bond between our people? That is unusual." Leah felt the weight of their gaze. "I know it sounds strange, but I'm telling you the truth. She's been searching for something, for years. I'm not sure exactly what, but it's always been tied to the dragons. And this symbol, she's always had it. I don't know why." The other dragons looked at each other. They were clearly intrigued, but there was also a sense of wariness in their eyes. It wasn't every day a human came to them with news about a hidden connection between their kind and humans. To them, the idea seemed almost impossible. Dragons and humans had always been separate, with little to no real connection beyond the stories of old. Talon took a slow, deep breath. This symbol is not just any mark. It is a sign of an ancient clan, one that has not been seen in thousands of years. And it is not something that should be shared lightly. If what you say is true, then your mother might know things that even we have forgotten. Leah felt her stomach tighten. She had no idea her mother's work could be tied to something so important.
What does that mean?
What does it have to do with me? Talon's golden eyes softened, though they still held a deep, intense gaze. If your mother truly knows of this bond, then she is in possession of knowledge that could change everything. For dragons, and for humans. Leah's heart beat faster. She had thought of her mother's work as just research, just old ruins and dusty books. But now, standing before the dragons, she realized that her mother's discovery might be much more than that. Talon stood, towering over her. His presence was overwhelming, yet there was something almost respectful in his posture now. If your mother's work is as important as you say, then we must know more. We will need to speak to her. Leah swallowed hard. I don't know where she is. She disappeared years ago on one of her missions. But if you think she knows something, I'll help you find her. I have to. The dragons looked at each other, and for the first time since Leah had arrived at their table, Talon smiled, though it was not a smile of kindness, but of something much older, much wiser. Then it seems your journey is just beginning, human. Leah's mind raced. She had come to the dragon's den to serve drinks, to do her job and go home like any other day. But now everything had changed. The dragons, these ancient, powerful beings who had lived for thousands of years, were telling her that her mother's work might hold the key to a secret that could change the fate of both humans and dragons. Her mother had been missing for years, and now Leah had no idea where to start looking. Talon, the silver-scaled dragon, stood tall in front of her. His massive frame cast a shadow over her, but his eyes, sharp and bright like gold, weren't filled with anger. Instead, they were filled with something much more dangerous, curiosity. Your mother is a historian, yes? Talon asked. His deep voice rumbled through the tavern, drawing the attention of nearby patrons. She studied the old relics, and yet she kept the truth from you? Leah nodded. I didn't know. She never told me much about her work, only that she had to go to distant places, study ancient ruins. But she was always so secretive. She never wanted to involve me in her research. Talon's eyes glimmered with interest. Perhaps your mother knew things she did not want you to know. Perhaps she uncovered something that could change everything. Leah felt a chill run down her spine. What could her mother have found? And why had she kept it hidden from her? She had always thought her mother's work was just about history and ancient artifacts. But it was much more than that. If Talon's words were true, her mother had discovered something important, something powerful, and it was tied to the dragons. Leah's thoughts were interrupted when one of the younger dragons, a black-scaled warrior with sharp red eyes, spoke up. Do you know where your mother was last seen? He asked, his voice cutting through the tension in the room. Where she went on her final mission? Leah hesitated. She went to a planet called Zara 7, a place known for its ancient ruins. I don't know exactly what she was looking for, but she said it was the key to understanding the dragon's past. Talon and the other dragons exchanged a long look. The older dragon spoke again, his voice soft but full of authority. Zara 7, that planet holds many secrets. It was once home to an ancient civilization, one that disappeared long before our kind ever walked this galaxy. If your mother went there, she was seeking something. Something we have forgotten. Leah's heart skipped a beat. But what could she have found there? What's the connection between my mom and your people? Talon's golden eyes softened, but his expression remained serious. The tattoo you saw on my arm, human. It is more than just a mark. It is a symbol of an old clan, an ancient order of dragons. We were once united with humans, allies in a war that took place long before your people even knew we existed, but the bond between us was broken long ago. The dragons fell silent, the weight of Talon's words sinking in. Leah had always thought of dragons as creatures of myth and legend. She had never imagined that they might have shared a history with humanity, let alone a history so deep and intertwined. But now it seemed that everything her mother had studied, everything she had worked for, was tied to this ancient bond. We need to go to Zara 7, Talon said suddenly, his voice firm. There are answers there, and we will need your help, human. You know more about this planet than any of us. Leah blinked, taken aback by the dragon's words. Me, how can I help? I don't know anything about ancient ruins or relics. Talon's gaze never left her. You are the key. Your mother's work is tied to you, and the tattoo you saw is not a coincidence. You may not understand it yet, but your connection to her, to this ancient bond, is stronger than you realize. Leah took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing thoughts. She had always wondered what happened to her mother, but now she realized that finding her mother wasn't just about family. It was about something much bigger. The fate of two species was at stake, and somehow she had become a part of it. I'll go, Leah said, her voice steady despite the fear that lurked beneath. I'll help you find my mother. The dragons nodded in approval, and with that the decision was made. Talon turned to the rest of his companions. Prepare the ship. We leave for Zara 7 at once. The journey begins. The next day, Leah found herself aboard a massive ship, far bigger than anything she had ever seen. The dragons had arranged for everything. The ship's interior was sleek and futuristic, but it felt like a relic from an ancient time, too. The walls hummed with a low, constant energy, and the floor beneath her feet was solid, made from materials that seemed to glow with an eerie, soft light. Leah was amazed by the ship's technology, but she was also nervous. She had never been on a ship like this before, and the thought of traveling to a distant planet to uncover secrets about her mother and about dragons was overwhelming. Yet she knew there was no turning back now. As the ship ascended from the planet's surface, Leah looked out the window and saw the vastness of space spread out before her. Stars twinkled in the distance, and the darkness of the universe seemed to stretch endlessly. Talon stood next to her, his enormous form casting a long shadow across the deck. We will arrive in a few days, he said, his voice calm. In that time, you will need to prepare yourself. The ruins on Zara 7 are dangerous. They are not like the peaceful ruins your mother studied. These are relics of a time long gone, full of traps and worse. Leah nodded, though a part of her wanted to ask more questions. She had so many, but she was afraid of what she might learn. Instead, she focused on the mission ahead. They were searching for her mother, yes, but she now realized they were also searching for answers to something much bigger, something that could affect the future of both dragons and humans. As the ship sailed through the stars, Leah couldn't help but wonder what she would find when they reached Zara 7. Would she find her mother? And what had her mother uncovered on that ancient planet? More importantly, what would it mean for her, for humanity, and for the dragons? The answers seemed just out of reach, but one thing was certain. This was only the beginning of a journey that would change everything. The journey to Zara 7 was long. Leah spent most of her time alone in her quarters, though she could feel the presence of the dragons nearby. The ship, sleek and filled with advanced technology, hummed quietly as it sailed through the stars. She tried to focus on the mission ahead, but her thoughts kept returning to the same question. Why had her mother kept everything a secret? She had always known her mother was different. Growing up, Leah had heard stories of ancient worlds, far-off planets, and powerful artifacts. But her mother never spoke of dragons. And now, Leah had learned that there was an entire history, an ancient bond between dragons and humans that she had never known. As the days passed, the crew prepared for their arrival on Zara 7. Talon, the silver-scaled dragon, gave brief lessons about what to expect. The ruins on Zara 7 were dangerous, he said. The ancient civilization that once lived there had disappeared, leaving behind powerful relics and hidden dangers. Leah would need to be careful. But despite Talon's warnings, Leah couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting for them on that forgotten world. Something important. Something that might change everything. Arrival on Zara 7. Finally, after days of travel, the ship broke through Zara 7's atmosphere. The planet was shrouded in thick clouds, and the surface below was rocky and barren. Leah could make out large, jagged mountains and vast stretches of desert. It was a desolate place, but it held a strange beauty. It was as if the planet was a forgotten memory, slowly fading into the past. As the ship descended toward the surface, Leah could see the ruins that Talon had spoken of. Giant stone structures lay half-buried in the sand, their sharp angles and broken walls hinting at a civilization far more advanced than anything Leah had ever known. Talon and the other dragons stood near the ship's control center, their eyes locked on the landscape below. They were calm, but Leah could sense their anticipation. They had waited for this moment for centuries. "We're close," Talon said, his voice low. "Your mother was last seen near the Temple of Arendor, deep in the eastern desert." "That is where we will start," Leah nodded. She felt a sense of dread and excitement mix in her chest. What had her mother found here? The questions kept flooding her mind. The ship landed with a soft thud on the rocky terrain. Leah quickly gathered her things and followed Talon and the other dragons outside. The air was dry and hot, and the wind kicked up dust as they made their way toward the ruins. The temple was much larger than Leah had imagined. It stood like a giant stone monolith, its entrance hidden by tall columns and worn statues. Time had not been kind to the structure. Its surface was cracked and weathered, and vines had begun to creep up the sides. But there was still something magnificent about it, something that made Leah feel as though she was standing before a piece of living history. Talon motioned for the group to stop. "This is where we must be careful." The Temple of Arendor was a place of great power. It is said that the ancient people who built it used magic to protect their secrets. We cannot trust what we see. Things may not be as they appear. Leah glanced at the dragons, who were all clearly on edge. Even Talon, usually so confident, seemed wary. "What do you mean by magic?" she asked, unsure of what she was getting into. Talon's golden eyes glinted. "This temple is not just a building. It is alive in its own way. The magic that once protected it still lingers even after all these years. And the relic your mother sought, it is at the heart of it." Leah's stomach churned. The idea of facing something so ancient and unknown made her nervous, but she pushed the fear aside. She had come this far. She couldn't turn back now. Entering the temple. The entrance to the temple was a giant set of double doors, covered in strange symbols and carvings. Talon stepped forward and placed his hand on the stone. A low hum filled the air, and the doors slowly began to creak open, revealing a dark hallway beyond. The dragons moved cautiously into the temple, their heavy footsteps echoing in the silence. Leah followed closely behind, her eyes scanning the walls. The carvings were beautiful, though they were difficult to understand. Some showed images of dragons, others of humans, and still more depicted strange creatures Leah had never seen before. As they walked deeper into the temple, Leah noticed something odd. The air felt colder here, and the shadows seemed to shift as if they were alive. She could almost hear whispers, faint and distant, though she couldn't make out the words. Talon stopped suddenly, his head tilting slightly. "Something is wrong," he murmured. "Stay close." The dragons spread out, their eyes scanning every corner of the room. Talon motioned for Leah to follow him as they moved deeper into the temple. They passed through several large chambers, each one filled with ancient artifacts, pieces of pottery, strange tools, and statues of long-forgotten gods. But Leah's focus was on the symbols on the walls. Many of them matched the tattoo she had seen on Talon's arm. She felt a strange pull toward one of the carvings. It depicted two figures, one human, one dragon, standing side by side, their hands touching. The image seemed to glow faintly in the dim light, and for a moment Leah felt as if she was being drawn into it. Without thinking, she stepped forward and touched the carving. The moment her fingers made contact with the stone, the ground beneath her feet trembled. Talon and the other dragons turned quickly, their eyes wide with alarm. "What did you do?" Talon growled. Leah pulled her hand away from the wall, but the tremors only grew stronger. I didn't mean to," she said, feeling the panic rise in her chest. "I just felt something. A connection." Suddenly the temple came alive. The carvings on the walls began to glow, and a bright light filled the chamber. The air crackled with energy, and the whispering voices grew louder, more urgent. Talon's eyes were wide with realization. The temple is reacting to you. This is it, the bond between dragons and humans. It's calling us. Leah's heart raced as the light grew brighter. She didn't know what was happening, but she felt the power building around her. She was no longer just a human caught in a strange story. She was part of something much bigger, something ancient, something powerful. The temple had awakened because of her, and now there was no going back. The temple's energy pulsed around Leah, crackling in the air like a storm about to break. Her heart raced as the carvings on the walls began to glow brighter, casting eerie shadows across the stone chambers. The whispers grew louder, rising in a chorus of ancient voices, but still they remained just out of reach, incomprehensible to her. Talon, the silver-scaled dragon, was the first to react. His massive wings flared as he stepped forward, eyes narrowed in intense focus. His voice cut through the rising tension. "Stay close to me, human." Leah didn't need to be told twice. The air felt charged with a power she couldn't understand, a force that made her skin tingle and her instincts scream that something was wrong. She took a step back, her hand instinctively reaching for Talon's arm as the temple seemed to hum with energy. The light from the carvings intensified, casting the whole chamber in a glow that almost hurt her eyes, and then without warning the ground beneath them rumbled once more. Dust fell from the ceilings and stones shifted. Talon growled, his claws scraping against the floor as he steadied himself. "This temple is waking up," Talon said, his voice low and filled with urgency, and with it the power of the relics. "We have disturbed something that should not be disturbed." Leah's breath caught in her throat as the floor beneath them cracked open, revealing a set of ancient stairs leading downward into darkness. The air grew colder, and a cold wind seemed to rise from the depths below. For a moment, Leah felt as though the temple itself was alive, its ancient stones breathing and shifting in response to her presence. Talon didn't hesitate. He led the way, his great wings folding behind him as he moved forward. The other dragons followed, their eyes scanning the shifting shadows warily. Leah, though nervous, found herself unable to look away from the new path that had opened before them. "This is it," Talon murmured, his voice quieter now. The heart of the temple. They descended the stone steps, the faint sound of their footsteps echoing off the walls. The air grew colder with each step, and the whispers seemed to grow louder, more insistent, as though they were calling to her specifically. Leah shivered but didn't stop. There was something here, something connected to her mother and the dragons, and something more. As they reached the bottom of the stairs, they found themselves in a vast chamber. The walls were covered in more carvings, more symbols, some of which Leah now recognized as the same as the one on Talon's arm. But it was the center of the room that caught her attention. In the middle of the chamber stood a pedestal, and on that pedestal was a glowing orb, shining with an inner light that was almost blinding. The orb was beautiful, made of some kind of crystal that seemed to pulse with power. Around the orb, strange markings swirled like a forgotten language. Leah took a step closer, drawn to it despite herself. Her mother had been here. She had to have been. The connection between the orb and the glowing symbols was undeniable. Talon stepped forward, his massive form blocking her path. "Do not touch it," he warned. "This orb is a relic, one of the most powerful artifacts of our people. It has the power to change everything." Leah's eyes widened. This is what my mother was searching for, isn't it?" Talon nodded slowly, his golden eyes fixed on the orb. "Yes, your mother discovered something we had long forgotten. The orb is not just a relic. It is a key. A key to what?" Leah asked, her voice barely a whisper. "To the ancient bond between humans and dragons," Talon replied. "And to the power we once shared." Leah's mind raced. She had always known that her mother had been seeking something important, but she had never imagined it was something this powerful. This orb held the answers to everything, to the forgotten history of dragons and humans, to the ancient connection that had been severed so many years ago. The other dragons stood back, their eyes focused on the orb as if it were both a treasure and a threat. Talon's voice was grim as he spoke again. "The power of the orb is not to be taken lightly. It was once used by both our people, dragons and humans, as a source of strength. It is said that when the orb is unlocked, the bond between us will be renewed. But it also comes with great risk." Leah's heart skipped a beat. "Risk? What kind of risk?" Talon's gaze met hers, and for the first time, his expression softened, though the seriousness in his eyes remained. "The orb can only be unlocked by someone who possesses the blood of both humans and dragons, someone who is connected to both races. That is why your mother's work was so dangerous. She was trying to unlock the power of the orb, but she did not understand the full consequences." Leah felt the weight of his words sink in. Her mother had been searching for this power, but why? What had she hoped to achieve? As if reading her thoughts, Talon continued, "Your mother may have found the orb, but unlocking its power could have disastrous consequences. The balance between humans and dragons has been broken for centuries. Reconnecting us might restore the old bond, but it could also lead to chaos. The power of the orb could corrupt both races, driving them into conflict instead of peace." Leah's mind spun. Her mother had found this orb, and now it was in her hands, or it would be if they could figure out how to unlock it. But the risk. the potential for destruction. It was too much to comprehend. Why me? Leah whispered. Why is it that I'm the one connected to all of this? Talon turned to her, his eyes filled with ancient wisdom. Because you carry the blood of both our peoples, the human and the dragon. The symbol on my arm that you saw, your mother's tattoo, is the same one that marks the bond between our ancestors. You are the last of that bloodline. The room seemed to close in on her, the weight of Talon's words sinking in. The last of that bloodline. The words echoed in her mind, and she realized that this wasn't just about her mother anymore. It was about her too. You must choose, Leah, Talon said. You are the key. If you unlock the orb, you may restore the bond. But if you fail, Leah's heart raced. But what if I can't? Talon stepped forward, his large hand resting on her shoulder, his touch surprisingly gentle for one so massive. You are not alone. We will face whatever comes together. And with those words, the future of both dragons and humans seemed to rest on her shoulders. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was the bridge between two worlds, one that could bring peace or destroy everything they knew. The chamber was silent except for the soft hum of the orb at the center. The faint light that radiated from it filled the room with an otherworldly glow. Leah's heart beat in her chest like a drum, the weight of Talon's words still hanging heavily in the air. The last of the bloodline. Leah couldn't shake the feeling that her whole life had been building up to this moment. All the strange things her mother had whispered about, the secrets she had kept, and the mysteries she had never shared, it was all connected now. But the question remained. What was she supposed to do with this power? Could she unlock the orb? And if she did, what would happen next? Talon stood by her side, watching the orb with an intensity that made her feel like it was more than just a glowing stone. It was a test, and they were all about to face it. The other dragons stood in a loose circle around the pedestal, their eyes filled with caution and uncertainty. They had waited for this moment for centuries, but none of them seemed eager to act. The power of the orb was not something to be taken lightly. Leah could feel the pressure building. She was the key, and yet she was terrified. What if unlocking the orb was a mistake? What if she wasn't ready? What if the ancient power inside was too much for her to control? The weight of the responsibility felt like 1,000 tons pressing down on her. You must decide, Leah. Talon's voice was low, but it carried a tone of quiet urgency. If you are to awaken the bond, you will have to unlock the orb yourself. But you must know, the power inside is not like anything you've ever felt before. The risk is immense. Leah swallowed hard. What happens if I fail? Talon's eyes met hers, and for the first time, his usual calmness seemed to falter. If you fail, the power of the orb will consume you. It will tear apart the very fabric of what remains between our two peoples. Dragons and humans will be driven to war, and the ancient connection will be lost forever. There will be no coming back from that. The air around Leah seemed to crackle with tension, as if the very room was waiting for her decision. She thought about her mother, who had risked everything to uncover the truth about the dragons. She thought about the bond between humans and dragons that had been broken, forgotten. She thought about how much the world had changed since the ancient times, and how much it could change again. But could she really restore that bond? Could she unlock the orb's power without destroying everything? Her hand hovered over the glowing orb, the warmth radiating from it almost drawing her in. She could feel it now, the pull, the connection. It wasn't just a feeling of power, it was a deep ancient bond. She could feel the dragon's power surrounding her, ancient and primal, and a flicker of something else, something more human. It was as though she were connected to both worlds, dragons and humans, and it was in her hands to decide what came next. Leah took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever came next. She remembered her mother's words, how she had always said that some things were meant to be discovered, no matter the cost. I'll do it, Leah said, her voice steady despite the fear running through her. I have to. I can't let this power destroy everything. The room seemed to hold its breath as Leah placed her hand on the orb. A surge of energy shot through her arm, and her whole body trembled under the force. The light from the orb exploded, filling the chamber with an intense brightness. Leah's vision blurred as the power washed over her, flooding her senses. She could feel it. The ancient energy, the connection to dragons and humans, racing through her veins. For a moment, Leah felt as though she was losing control. The power was overwhelming, pushing against her will, threatening to consume her. But she held firm. She focused on the one thing she knew. She had the strength of both dragons and humans inside her. She wasn't just a bystander. She was the key. The light around her intensified, and the air grew heavy with the force of the magic. Leah closed her eyes, focusing on the connection she felt deep within herself. The bond between dragons and humans, the shared history, the shared power, it was all there waiting for her to unlock it. With a deep, steadying breath, Leah focused every ounce of her will on the orb. She reached deep inside herself, drawing on the strength of both dragons and humans. She could feel the magic building, and for a moment, she feared it would break her, but she pushed forward, her mind clear, her heart steady, and then, with a sharp crack, the orb released its power. The entire temple shook, the walls rattling with the force of the release. The light from the orb flared, and for a moment, it seemed as though the very world itself was coming undone. Leah felt herself pulled toward the center of the light, her body surrounded by a whirlwind of energy. The power surged through her and she gasped, her mind nearly overwhelmed by the rush of magic. But then, just as quickly as it had started, everything went still. Leah stood at the center of the chamber, breathing heavily, her body humming with energy. The orb was no longer glowing. It had become a dull, empty stone. But the air around her was different. It felt alive, vibrant, as if the power of the bond had been restored. The dragons were silent, their eyes wide with a mix of awe and fear. Talon stepped forward, his voice low and reverent. "You have done it," he said. "The bond has been restored. The power of dragons and humans is one again." Leah could feel it now, the deep, ancient connection. It was real. She wasn't just a human anymore. She was something more, something connected to both worlds, something that had been lost for so long. The weight of the orb's power was still there, but it no longer felt overwhelming. It felt like a promise, a new beginning. But even as the power surged through her, Leah knew that their work wasn't finished. The orb had unlocked the bond, but the real challenge lay ahead. The world had changed, and it would take more than just magic to heal the rift between dragons and humans. But Leah was ready. She had unlocked the ancient bond, and now she would fight to make sure it never broke again. As she turned to the dragons, Talon's eyes met hers, filled with respect and something more. "You have proven yourself, Leah. The future of both our peoples lies in your hands now." Leah nodded. "Then let's make sure we get it right this time. Let me know if you'd like to adjust anything or if you need further parts to the story."